Hello everyone, and welcome to the Storytime with Billy Lights, Camera, Teaching Podcast. Welcome back, or welcome if this is your first visit to my podcast. You may have already checked in with my first episode called Who, What and Why, which delves into my journey into becoming a primary school teacher. And from that first podcast you may have learnt as well that I am also a performer as well, mostly amateur, sometimes professional. So today I'm going to be going on the flip side of what I talked about in the first episode, which was my teaching career. And today I'm going to be talking about my career as a performer as well, and where I began, what I've encountered along my journey as a performer, and where I am now. And I think particularly in this climate today with COVID-19 wreaking havoc on theatres and the entertainment industry across the world, I think it's a really good opportunity to talk about how my performing arts life has been affected by that and such. And I'm sure there'll be things that many performers locally and professionally will be able to relate to in some sense as well. So of course, if you do enjoy this podcast, go on and share it with your friends. It's available on Anchor and Spotify, and I'll also be putting a short clip on YouTube as well. All of my profiles come under Storytime with Billy, so do check those out on my socials. So here we are for another podcast. Strap in, it'll probably go for about an hour or so, but we'll just see how long I talk for, and hopefully you'll enjoy that podcast. I had some great feedback for episode 1, so thank you for your kind comments. Lots of you really seem to appreciate the informal sense to the podcast, and I think that's important too. I want to try and be as natural as possible and just be able to talk about my experiences without too much scripting. I've always got a plan for what I want to cover in each episode, but for the most part, I'm going off on tangents, and as many of you know, I like to go off on tangents quite a lot. So today, we are going to be talking about my history as a performer. Now, most of my close friends, and any of you who've seen me in person, will know that I'm quite a theatrical person by and by. And that's always stemmed from a love of music and singing and dressing up. From a young age, I was always watching Disney films and musicals. I was always playing imaginative play with my brother, my younger brothers, mostly my twin brother. And that was, again, inspired for all the things that we'd watch on TV. We'd sing along with the jingles and the adverts. We'd pick up on tunes. And we were just being creative and imaginative all the time. My brother and I, my twin brother, when we were younger, and even into our teenage years and some of our adulthood as well, we would create our own ideas for movies, TV shows, even our own theme park as well. And we still got all those plans in a box somewhere. And part of me wishes I'd embraced that creative side a bit more, because we used to do this all the time. We'd design maps for the theme parks, we'd design characters, we'd write episode lists, we'd write a few scripts as well. And that was really inspired by the Disney company and all the things that they created, their theme parks, their movies, their TV channels. And we'd always have these visions of being able to embrace our dreams of being these film producers and stars as well. I think we appeared in most of the films and TV shows that we came up with. We even created a soap opera based on our own lives, and I'm sure many of us can agree that our lives tend to be a bit soapy at times, particularly when things get a bit dramatic. So yes, I've always been creative from a young age, and I've always loved being different characters and making things up, and my parents definitely spotted that from a young age. In my last video I mentioned how supportive my parents were of performing. I think mum more so from a young age. My dad is an absolute legend, and he is very into his motorbikes and motocross, and he did lots of professional stuff when he was younger, and he's a motorbike salesman and entrepreneur now. And I think he probably gathered that when myself and my brother were born, because we were the eldest of 5, we weren't really inclined for anything sporty, or certainly for the rough and tumble of motocross. And I think mum picked up on that, and I imagine dad did as well. So mum was very keen to get us involved with either some singing or some dancing. And of course we did some other clubs throughout our time. We did our swimming lessons and our surf life saving. But to be honest, that was never really our calling. And certainly from my point of view, I always wanted to be doing creative things. I would have loved to have had full singing and dancing lessons when I was younger, but I never really went down that route. How I did start off though was in a company called, I think it was the Tom Armstrong Academy, that was based in Braunton. Well, we had our rehearsals in Braunton, and we performed our first show at the Landmark Theatre in Ilfracombe, which is a very special venue to me, which I will elaborate on as this podcast continues. So my brother and I were signed up for the Tom Armstrong Academy. I think at the time we were about 5, 6 years old. So this was a daunting prospect to be thrown into this very adult-based theatrical group. There were children involved, but they were a lot older than us. They must have been like their 9s, 10s, early teens. So Jordan and I were very shy. Jordan's my brother, by the way. Jordan and I were very shy, and we were very small and blonde and squeaky, and this was very alien to us as well. So for a first-time venture into performing arts, it was quite daunting. But I will never forget it, because in that show, Jordan and I had our first on-stage solo and duets together, and we sang Hakuna Matata from The Lion King. And that was a very special song to us because we watched The Lion King on repeat. In fact, we watched all Disney films on repeat, and even to this day, Jordan and I can still quote Disney films back to front, and it's influenced us in so many ways, and particularly myself. So we sang Hakuna Matata. We were 2 small, scared boys, probably looking at the floor with these radio mics on that we didn't really know how to use, and I'm not really sure how strong a performance it was, but I think the audience got off the fact that we were twins and it was quite cute. And being a twin is fantastic. It is like having a best friend with you all the time. Somebody who knows you inside and out, which is also to its detriments on occasion, but you can't buy the relationship that twins have. So I'm very, very grateful to have a special relationship like that with my brother Jordan. And it's brilliant that we're both into the same thing. We're both very much into theatre, but of course that also has its downside, which I'll elaborate on later on. I mean, I'm sure you could probably gather as a twin that often, well, it's difficult if you're not a twin, but put it straight, really, when you're a twin, you often get put into the very same box, and people just can not all the time, people can categorize you as being one person. Oh, it's the twins. Oh, it's the boys. And often it's, oh, you can both play the part, or, oh, well, you're just exactly the same. And yes, I am very aware that as a twin, that we are very similar. We're twins, it comes with the programme. But we do have our differences. And as performers, yes, we are very similar, but we also have our differences. So it's very disheartening when people try and just force you into the same box, or just say, oh no, well, you can both play the part because you're twins. But actually, that kind of takes away from the efforts that we both put in individually. And Jordan and I both have our own likes and dislikes in terms of performances. And there have been roles where we've played as twins together. We did Chitty Chitty Bang Bang in 2019, and we played the 2 Russian spies, Boris and Goran, and those parts lended themselves to being twins, and we absolutely smashed it without blowing our own trumpets, because we were able to throw ourselves into it. We had a good working relationship, we weren't afraid to take things too far, and we would go over the top, and it was brilliant. So that sort of thing really lends itself to performing as twins, and we've done some concerts together, and there's an appeal to that. But when we're trying to stand on our own 2 feet and play our own parts, for sometimes it can be quite difficult when you're trying to break out of each other's shells. And that's why, through doing my own podcast and through doing my Storytime with Billy, and in my own career, it's really important that I stand as just being Billy, and on the other side, Jordan stands as just Jordan, because we do have our own lives. We're not attached at the hip, we're not Siamese, and it's important that we have our own identities, but that doesn't discredit the fact that we love being twins, and there are amazing opportunities to really embrace that. So it made sense to explain it there, but I'll come into it a bit later on. So Jordan and I had our first duet on stage doing Hakuna Matata, and the audience seemed to lap it up. I think it was probably our cute little squeaky voices singing Hakuna Matata. And that, it probably sounded a bit like that. My voice didn't break for a long time. I was forever known as Squeaky Billy Buckingham. I mean, swaves of bullying, and some people thought it was endearing. I hated being cute. I mean, I still dislike being called cute now, because you never know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. But anyway, we performed in the Tom Armstrong Academy, and it was an interesting start to our stage life. I'm not sure it was really the company for us. I'm not sure that company lasted for a long time anyway. I haven't heard about it now. I think they all moved on. So what would be next for us? We clearly had a taste for it, even though it was scary and terrifying. We had a knack for performing that we wanted to embrace. So from about the age of 6, we joined the scouting movement. We joined the Beavers, and we had a cousin called Charlotte who was in the Guiding Association, and she took part in the North Devon Gang Show. And this is a cabaret variety show which is casted entirely by members of the scouting and guiding organisations. And Mum thought, oh, that would be a good way to get Jordan and Billy on stage. And we'd seen a few gang shows. I mean, I think I slept through one because I was quite young when I went to see it. And of course, most theatre shows start at 7:30 and run for 2 hours or so. So as a 6-year-old, it was a late night for me. I can do it now. I mean, there's a few shows I've fallen asleep in, but less of that for now. So we were cajoled into doing the gang show. And don't get me wrong, as a child, I was quite shy and quite nervy. And we turned up at the venue, which was a secondary school where they held the rehearsals for this North Devon gang show, and we were absolutely terrified. Absolutely terrified we were about going in there with all these strange big people. We were very small, very young, and we'd only done one show, and even that was a rocky experience. But there was a boy there who is one of Jordan and I's lifelong friends, and I've got to say, it hasn't changed at all over these years, but he arrived at the door. He was full of character, full of bounce, full of happiness, and he welcomed Jordan and I into the rehearsal. He looked after us because we were so scared, and it was thanks to him that we got through the door and really got involved with the gang show. And once we were in there and we started doing all the songs and the sketches, I mean, gang show is wild. I mean, it is made up of lots of really corny sketches and lots of musical songs and campy numbers and over extravagant costumes, but that's what makes gang show what it is. And as a stepping stone into the world of performing arts, it was amazing. And I had 8 of the best years of my life performing the gang show. I made so many lifelong friends that I still talk to now. They're all on video and DVD, so Mum often likes to drag those out and embarrass us. In my first ever gang show, again, it came back to a duet between Jordan and I think they were playing on the twin thing. I think gang show really highlighted to us that we wanted to break out into our own identities. With our first gang show in February 2002, at the tender age of 8, Jordan and I sang a duet. I started the solo, and it was of Little People from Les Miserables. They laugh at me because I'm not 100 feet tall. And little people know, and little people fight. We might look easy pickings, but we've got some bite. It was slightly different lyrics in the gang show, and I sang that solo first, and then Jordan came in to sing the rest of the song with me. Goliath was a bruiser, he was tall as the sky, but David threw a right and gave him one in the eye. And then we sang that, and we had a huge round of applause, and it's on DVD, and we're squeaky, and we're tiny, but it's lovely to look back and see how far we've come. You know, I remember I wasn't smiling, I was just kind of stood there with my hands tight at the side. I mean, I probably felt less nervous singing a solo on stage then than I do now, because I get it all the time, and I'm sure other performers will agree with me, that people seem to think that because you spend most of your time on stage, that you must be super confident. And when I am on stage, like I've said with my teaching, I'm doing something I love, so I am super confident. But the moment before you walk on stage, particularly if you're playing a principal part or you've got a big solo to do, it is terrifying. I often get my nerves up by just swearing as much as possible. I know that's terrible. And obviously, if there's children around, I won't swear in front of children. I've learned that as a teacher. But, you know, I often get my nerves up by swearing. And before a show, I just like to spend some time on my own because most people like to go around and do that. Oh, good luck, you'll be amazing. And I don't like to be smothered when I'm feeling nervous because it just makes me feel worse. So before a show, I often like to spend some time on my own, or if I'm at the Landmark in Ilfracombe, that's great because it's right by the seaside. So you can go out the stage door, you can take in the fresh sea air. It's nice and quiet. Often there's a few people smoking out by the stage door, but don't ever do it in costume, you'll get in trouble. I don't smoke, so I don't have that problem, but I know other people that have. But I go out and take in the sea air, do some vocal warm-ups to myself, and then I just get myself into a very zen place where I can walk on stage and deliver my best performance. And I always try and keep in the zone. And once I'm on stage, you never know that I was nervous because I just give 100% and I throw myself into it. And you have to. The best performers will just give it everything they've got. You can tell when somebody's not really feeling it. And it does happen to all of us. We've all had to play roles before that we don't really connect to. And that's difficult, especially if you're doing it for like college or for school where you have to play the role. Whereas with amateur, you can choose whether you play a role. Of course, if you're professional and you're offered a job on stage, then you're unlikely to say no because it's a very competitive industry. I've not really had that dilemma of not having the pressure of having to turn down a role because I do it mostly for fun and amateur isn't paid. And again, I get asked that all the time. I should do a video of all the things you get told if you're an amateur performer. Oh, you'd never believe it was amateur. We thought you were professional. Oh, where's your next venue? I'm doing a Devon accent because that's where I'm from. Oh, where's your next venue? Oh, you're not on tour? "Oh, how much do you get paid? You're doing it for free. Oh, you must really love it then. Oh, we've seen so many amateur shows, but this was the best one I've ever seen." And bless these audiences, every show they see is the best they've ever seen for most people. Although you'll find there are some people who are a bit more selective about what they see and are very honest as well. And I think that's important because you often find you can't criticise amateurs because they're just doing it for fun. But I know as an amateur performer, I take my craft really, really seriously. And that can be seen as me being too serious and stubborn and overconfident. But I think if you are going to do something that you're passionate about, then you should take it seriously and you should want to do your best. So I'm always welcome to criticism. It always hurts, like if you get criticism you don't want to hear, but you do have to build a thick skin with anything that you're passionate about because there will be bumps along the road. This has digressed from me being nervous from having a solo in a gang show, but it all links together. And so yeah, I get myself in the zone, I get zen, and I go on stage and I do my best to give it 100%. And hopefully most of the time that comes across. Even if my performance isn't the most polished or clean, hopefully the passion coming from me really comes across. That's what means the most to me, that people can see how much being on stage means to me and how important it is, because I absolutely love it. There's no other feeling in the world like standing on the stage and hearing your reaction from an audience, whether it's an applause after a solo or it's the laughter from a joke. It just fills you with so much adrenaline and endorphins, and those adrenalines are often what gets you through a show, particularly if you're feeling worried about a high note or a line. That adrenaline often gives you the power to do that. Doesn't happen to all of us, and we've all messed up notes before. I did Calamity Jane in 2019. Brilliant show. I worked with my best friend Joni on that show playing Calamity Jane, and I play Wild Bill Hickok. Some of the best fun I've ever had, and it was great to play a role that wasn't stereotypically me, like a big man's man, strong, handsome cowboy. It wasn't generally me, but it was great to do that. But on the last performance, and we'd done 3 performances before then, my voice was absolutely fine. I delivered my songs. My heart is higher than a hawk, which is a great song. I did all that, but on the final performance, this is after the matinee, my voice just went. It just completely went. I can't explain why. I hadn't been drinking dairy or shouting and screaming. My voice just went. I mean, I could hold it and I could deliver, but it wasn't nearly as strong or as crisp as it should have been. I was terrified because it just kind of went. Maybe I was being cursed. Maybe there was a theatre ghost. But I can't explain it. And I was just chugging water off stage. I was just resting between each scene and only singing where I absolutely had to. But it was terrifying. And ever since then, I've tried really, really hard to look after my voice and keep it in good nick. I've never been professionally trained as a singer. I've never been professionally trained in anything, really. I follow a lot of YouTube videos. It's just lots of practice and learning from mistakes that I look after my voice and just trying to warm it up as best I can. I would never profess to being able to teach somebody to sing because I don't have that technical jargon, or I don't want to lead somebody down the wrong path. I just tell people that it's really important to look after your voice and warm it up properly and rest it, because it's a muscle and you do need to look after your voice, because otherwise it will eventually break away and you won't be able to do anything with it. But of course, there are some amazing singing teachers out there, locally and professionally, who will be able to steer you on the right path. And I've always considered maybe getting some extra singing lessons just to help maintain my voice. And I think with some of the shows I've got coming up, and I'm always keen to improve. That's the thing I've learned, that you can never stop improving. And as a teacher, it's something we encourage all the time, that there is always something that you can do to improve. Not always to be better, because I think that can put people on a pedestal that they don't want to be on. But I always want to improve and find different ways of doing things, either to make singing easier or to find a different nuance to my performance. And I'm lucky that I work in a community that is really supportive. For example, my friend Lee, who directs lots of the shows in the Ilfracombe, and was also my lecturer at college, he often still talks to me as if I'm one of his students, but actually I prefer that because I learn a lot from him and he helps me to reflect and look at my performances in lots of different angles. I'll talk about Lee in a bit more detail later on. I hope he won't mind me talking about him, because he's a really inspirational person for me in terms of how I see myself as a performer and as a person. So, moving back to where we were. So, I started in the Armstrong Academy as a 5-year-old. I got into the gang show at 8, and I did that for 8 years. So that was 2002 to 2009. 8 brilliant years of the gang show, and it really gave me a flavour and a feeling for what it felt like to be on stage. And I was itching to do more because I never got into like the young generation shows or the amateur dramatics. I was always involved in the gang show, and it wasn't until 2008 that I really had any idea that amateur dramatics existed. Well, actually, no, I tell a lie, because in 2003, I was in year 4, and I had a teacher in primary school called Mr. Archer, David Archer, and he, I would still say to this day, is my favourite teacher of all time. We've all got a teacher that we remember with the fondest memories. Mr. Archer made learning fun, he was warm, he was kind, he understood me, he gave me the lead in our Christmas play, he could see my passions, and he didn't judge me. And unbeknownst to me, Mr. Archer was a performer. I still call him Mr. Archer, even though I'm 27 now. Mr. Archer was a performer too, and he told us that he was going to be performing in a musical called Singing in the Rain at the Queen's Theatre in Barnstaple. And I was so excited knowing that my teacher was on stage. So myself, Jordan, and my mum went to see Mr. Archer on stage, and it was just so inspiring to see somebody that I already looked up to as a teacher also doing something that I loved as a performer. And I think now that when I'm on stage and some of my students come to watch me, I wonder if they feel that same sense of pride and inspiration. I would really love them to feel that, because that's the way I felt when I saw Mr. Archer on stage. Mr. Archer wasn't my teacher for very long. He left and I was absolutely devastated. But then I ended up meeting him 7 years later in 2010 when we both auditioned for Disney's Beauty and the Beast with the same society that he'd performed Singing in the Rain with. And then it was strange having to call him David. But yeah, since 2010, I've performed numerous times with Mr. Archer on stage. And I hope one day that some of my students that I've taught might perform alongside me on stage and have those same memories. And I think I constantly thank Mr. Archer for always believing in my abilities and always being such a kind and generous teacher. And it's just so awe-inspiring to be able to perform with him now. So Mr. Archer, if perchance you're watching this, David, thank you for always believing in me, and I hope we get to perform again very soon once restrictions allow us. So thank you very much, David. So, yes, that was kind of my first glimpse into amateur dramatics, watching Mr. Archer on stage. But then in 2008, I was at secondary school, and it was a school secretary called Jo Hillman. She knew that me and Jordan were very into theatre, and we did all the school plays as well. And she said that a society that she was with called the Barnstaple Amateur Operatic Society, now very sadly defunct, were putting on Fiddler on the Roof. Now that name I'd heard before, but it wasn't one I was familiar with. Up to this point, I was familiar with very classic musicals like Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, Mary Poppins. But now my eyes were starting to be opened to like other musicals out there, and actually there was other opportunities to perform. And the thought of doing something a little bit different from gang show, because by this point, I was growing up, I was like noticing other shows and musicals, and I needed a change. I get very, very restless. I never like to do the same thing for too long. And I thought this would be really interesting to go and try something new. So we were given some audition details. We went along to the first meeting, and it was terrifying because the Operatic Society prided themselves on their singing, rightly so, because that was the nature of the society. And they got there, and the first question we were asked were, what vocal range are you? What vocal group? And Jordan and I had just no idea, because even though we'd done music at school, we hadn't really had singing lessons, and through gang show, you weren't taught to sing in a different vocal group or a vocal part. You just sung the songs in harmony. There was no real musical challenge there. But at the Operatic, obviously everybody was split into sopranos, mezzos, altos, tenors, and basses. And we had no idea, and bear in mind, we were teenagers here, so our voices were starting to change and break, so we sat in the bass group because we didn't want to sing anything too high, and at that point, with our ever-changing voices, that would have been disastrous. But that was a great stepping stone into the world of amateur dramatics, and we did Fiddler on the Roof, and we met some of our lifelong friends doing that, and we were still in the junior cast at that point because we were under 16, so we need to be chaperoned, but it felt a lot more grown up than the gang show, and I think that was what really inspired me to then go on and do my performing arts diploma, which I mentioned in episode 1 of my podcast, and then to embrace other amateur groups, because we got a real feel for it, and having the opportunity to be a part of a story and become characters. And of course, Fiddler on the Roof is a really dynamic story, and it's got some real heartbreaking issues in there and some fantastic numbers. We got to do the iconic bottle dance, which was really, really challenging. We had to balance these plastic bottles with sand in the bottom on our heads and not allow them to fall over. And for the most part, we managed it. And the reaction from the audience was brilliant. So being in a musical, being able to tell a story and embrace these characters was just phenomenal. And I was really getting my buzz performing here. And this is where I started to think, well, maybe I don't want to be a primary school teacher. Maybe I want to do this as a career. And that's what inspired me to then apply for the Performing Arts National Diploma. And I think that's where my life changed completely. So prior to having the audition for the diploma, I was also involved, after finishing Fiddler on the Roof, I did The Wizard of Oz with Braunton Productions, now known as Atlantic Coast Theatre. And I also got invited to perform in a Shakespeare play, The Taming of the Shrew, and I played the part of Lucentio. That, to date, is my grand's favourite show that I've ever done, because it was an outdoor production of Shakespeare in the summertime, and it was modernised. It was so much fun to do. There was loads of comedy, lots of physical, there was singing, lots of singing and dancing. I had a blast doing that. I'd love to do some more Shakespeare. I was lucky enough when I was teaching in my first school to be able to run a drama club and put on Romeo and Juliet, which was for Key Stage 2 children, so year 3 to year 6. And we did an abridged version of Romeo and Juliet that I adapted and wrote, that they took to the Fringe Theatre Fest in North Devon, which was incredible. And it was so amazing to watch my children, my students, performing Shakespeare and remembering the lines, having to project outside against the elements, against the wind and the space that they had and the acoustics, but it was phenomenal. So yeah, that was definitely a buzz for Shakespeare. We were going to perform Midsummer Night's Dream before COVID got in the way. So who knows, maybe we can do that again one day. And through my work as a drama teacher at Centre Stage School, hopefully I can do that too. So yeah, I got to do some Shakespeare. I did The Wizard of Oz. And then I auditioned for the Performing Arts National Diploma. So for the National Diploma, I had to perform a monologue. And I was only just getting to grips with what a monologue would be. I mean, we'd done bits of it in drama at GCSE, but it was mostly scripted stuff and not a lot of creative stuff. So I found out the monologue was a speech delivered by one person, sometimes to the audience, sometimes to themselves. And I decided, because I'd just been in Fiddler on the Roof, I did the monologue that Tevier, the lead character, delivers at the start of the show. A fiddler on the roof. Sounds crazy, no? But here in our little village of Anatevka, you might say, every one of us is a fiddler on the roof, trying to scratch out a pleasant and simple tune without breaking his neck. It isn't easy. I'm surprised I remembered that first part of it. There was a lot more to that. But that was the monologue I chose to do. I didn't have to sing in the audition, but I would have been quite happy to. And I had to audition in front of Lee, who was the drama teacher, drama and musical theatre, of course, I should say. Lee is an expert in musical theatre and all things performing arts. And another teacher called Steve, who led the acting classes. And Steve is just one of the most brilliant teachers I've ever met. Well, Lee and Steve, both brilliant, but Steve doesn't work there anymore, but he was just awesome. And he was one who encouraged me to follow my dreams of being a primary school teacher and taught me lots of tricks of the trade about, there was the 3-second rule about when you're talking to a class, you look at one person for 3 seconds, then you look at another for 3 seconds, so that you're connecting with everyone in the class, so they're all getting a glimpse of what you're teaching them and what you're telling them. So that was a really good hint. And he also encouraged me to follow my dreams, and I've seen him recently and we always have a catch up, and he appears to be really proud of me, which means a lot, because I found Steve was always a bit harder to impress, but I think he always saw the best in people, and he knew those people who wanted to work hard and had the passion. So thank you, Steve, if you are listening to this. Thank you for your encouragement, because that's what helped me to follow my dream of becoming a primary school teacher. So thank you, Steve. So I did the audition. Again, I think it was a very generic by-the-book performance. I think there's still an element of me performing now where I try and overact things, or I try and deliver the lines the way I think the panel want to hear them, or that an audience want to hear them. I need to learn to be able to just relax and just perform things naturally, because I've always worried about myself, my self-doubt, and thinking that what I'm doing isn't enough, so maybe I need to hand things up or do what everyone else wants me to do, or try and change my way to fit in. And I found that hasn't worked out. I just need to believe in myself a bit more. But clearly they saw the bare bones of somebody who wanted to perform, and of course I had my GCSEs under my belt, so I was accepted onto the Performing Arts National Diploma. So that was equivalent to 3 A-levels, and I was also doing a national award in musical theatre on the side, and I was really keen on musical theatre. I've always loved it, and the more musicals and shows I was doing, then the more passion I was getting for it. So I was starting to research new musicals and learning new songs all the time, and just trying to get to grips with things, because in secondary school drama it is all very play based, and whereas I love plays and I wish I'd been more passionate about them from a younger age, musical theatre has always been my forte. I'm not a good dancer. I can follow choreography and I'll give it beans, but if you ask me to freestyle, I'll just look like a dad's dancing in the nightclub. And that's the honest truth. I've never been a great dancer. My feet are not easy to point. I don't have a lot of control. I'm a little bit floppy. I'm a bit all over the place, but I do give it energy. And, you know, sometimes that counts for things. But I would say singing is definitely my strong point. I'm certainly not going to be world class, but I try and put heart into it. I do wish as a singer sometimes I would just relax a bit more and not try so hard. That's what I think brings me down as a performer. I'm a little bit too try hard sometimes. Sometimes you need to ham things up and be over the top. Like if you're working with children, or if you're in a pantomime, or if you're in a show that calls for a bit more colour and cartoon, like performances like Beauty and the Beast or Honk, the musical of The Ugly Duckling. But on the whole, I think I get far too in my head, and I think that was noticed about me through college. I really enjoyed my National Diploma in Performing Arts. I got to do so many shows. We performed Guys and Dolls. We did a mega mix of different musicals, Tale as Old as Time. We even got to perform an operetta called The Pirates of Penzance, which I absolutely loved. Operetta isn't for everybody. And the moment you hear operetta, you think of opera, and for some reason that scares people off. A bit like Shakespeare. But operetta and Shakespeare I both really love, because without those mediums of play and musical, then we wouldn't have the shows that we have today. So you have to thank Gilbert and Sullivan, because they were so clever in their lyrics and their patter songs. So Pirates of Penzance was great, and we got to do all the big numbers like Modern Major General and Cat Like Tread. Come, friends who plough the sea, where they're all charging into battle. That was great fun. I played a character called Samuel, which admittedly was a bit of a boring part, but I did get to hand out lots of instruments for battle. Oh, here's your crowbar, your centre bit, your life preserver, you may want to hit. And I was just handing all these things out. So that was the most interesting part I got to play in that show. But we did lots of mini projects. We did some Commedia dell'arte, we did some Greek theatre, we did some Christmassy bits, and we got to perform in lots of different places as well, mostly at the Landmark in Ilfracombe. But I think what stood out for me the most in college is that the moment I stepped into the room on induction day, when everybody was there together, I felt like a very small fish in a very big pond, because it seemed that everybody else there already had their cliques and their friends, and they were all talking about all the shows that they've been in and all the dance classes they attended. It wasn't everybody. I think there were a few people who, like me, weren't from a naturally performing background, but I just felt like, oh, maybe I don't belong here, and everybody seemed to be so confident and so fantastic at performing, and I just felt like a nervous wreck. For the first few weeks of performing arts there, everyone else would go off to the canteen and eat food, and I would just go and sit either on the stairs outside or find a bench on my own, because I just didn't feel like I belonged there. And again, I was close to quitting because I was still really, really shy. I didn't have the confidence that everybody else appeared to have, and I would just eat lunch on my own. But I was very lucky that I eventually ended up making some really good friends, that these people welcomed me under their wing, and I was able to start coming out of my shell. And I certainly found a knack for comedy, particularly in our improv and our devising sessions when we played games like Party Quirks, which is one that I still use now with my drama students. Party Quirks is a great game, certainly for like snowballing characters and like building up prolonged characters for a lengthened period of time. So in Party Quirks, somebody will be the host, possibly of a Christmas party, Halloween party, your choice, you can choose the party, and about 4 other people will be guests who come to the party. Now, the host won't know who the guests are, but they will be stock characters like maybe a policeman or a dancer or a superhero, and they'll come into the party and they can't say who they are. They just have to be the character, like acting them out and by engaging in conversations and showing physical clues and traits, and the host has to guess who they are. If the host can correctly identify them, the guest will be out and they'll sit down. But of course, through college, we needed to challenge ourselves a bit more. So once I played a man who celebrates all religions, and that was quite difficult to portray, but I just had to keep flicking between. I felt like I had multiple personality disorder, because I was going through Christianity and through Buddhism and through Judaism, and just trying to show lots of appropriate ways of showcasing the religion. And luckily, I was the last guest in. Maybe it was because my performance was so confusing, nobody could work out what it was. And of course, it's very easy to fly into just already set characters like Buzz Lightyear or Hermione Granger, and those are a bit more tricky, particularly if you have an audience who don't know those characters. But it's a great game, and often it gets really good reactions when I play it with my drama group. So yes, if you're a drama teacher out there and you're looking for a game, Party Quirks is a great one. So I started to find my feet a bit in college, but there were still a few people there who I didn't really get along with. I think it was a clash of personalities, people who I thought were very arrogant and big-headed, people who clearly knew they were talented, and there were some really talented people in my year at college, and I think they would lord that over me a bit because I didn't have the confidence, so I was a bit of a wet lettuce, and I let them make fun of me, and I let them push me around, and I wish I'd learned to stand up for myself a bit earlier on, because actually the way that some of them spoke to me wasn't very kind at all, and they just kind of messed me around a bit. But there were some really genuine people in that course that I really liked, and people that I still talk to now. Charlotte, for example, I met doing that course, and we've been friends for years and years and years. She was always really understanding, and she's incredibly passionate about performing as well. She's been a drama teacher for a few different schools, and her children are both very into theatre now as well, and she's got performing arts running through her veins. She's a great performer, she's a great friend, and Charlotte, thank you for always being an incredible friend to me at college, and thank you for all the laughs we have. Lovage. Another friend that I met through college who has stayed in my life ever since is somebody I mentioned earlier, and her name is Joni, and she and I'm not sure if we were best friends from the get-go, but we always just seemed to connect. We'd have a very bizarre sense of humour and just making little gags, and we seemed to be the polar opposites. I was this shy, like, young teenager. She was very brash and very confident and wasn't afraid to speak her mind, and she gave it beans in her singing. But we just seemed to connect, and as we've grown older, we both matured, I think. Well, matured to an extent. We still crack Gavin and Stacey jokes and laugh at a video of a very tall person pretending to be household appliances. If you're listening, Joni, you'll know exactly what video it is, and I urge you to go and watch it now. But she's always been there for me. She's always been really supportive. She's always been there to give me tough love if I need it. And we just click on stage. We played lots of roles together. We played Dolores and Shank in a sister act section. We played The Ugly Duckling and the Cat in Honk, which is a musical of The Ugly Duckling. I played The Ugly Duckling. Joni played the Cat. And The Sound of Music, we played Uncle Max, myself and Joni as Elsa, the Baroness. And that was great fun. We had such a laugh in that, and including Lawrence, who played Captain Von Trapp. I don't think there was a single rehearsal we had in that show where we didn't have to stop just through roaring with laughter. And those are the best kinds of shows, I think, where you can just relax and just not take it too seriously and still get the job done. And the chemistry that Joni and I have on stage as friends is just fantastic. And we are best friends. So having to do Calamity Jane, where we had to have a kiss at the end, was just really awkward for both of us, because it would be like a brother and sister having to share a moment. It just felt really wrong. But we're both very committed to what we do, and of course it all worked out for the best. So I cannot wait for the moment when I get to perform with Joni again and just get in trouble together for being told off in rehearsals. And Joni, again, if you're listening to this, thank you for always believing in me and for sticking up for me when other people weren't so nice. And thank you for being tough with me when I've needed a boot up the backside. Thank you for always being such an amazing co-star, and I really cannot wait for the next show we do together, whatever that may be. So Joni, thank you very much. So I was at college for 2 years doing the BTEC National Diploma, and I did a 2-year foundation degree in theatre there as well, as I mentioned in the first podcast. So I was at college in total for 4 years doing performing arts, and I definitely grew throughout that time. In my final years of college, when I was on my degree, we did a theatre and education performance where we did it was kind of a quasi murder mystery, but without any murder. But we called it Who Stole the Diamond? And myself, Grills, Jamie, Lewis, and Dan, who were the guys on the course at the time, we created and devised a piece where myself and Jamie were 2 police officers who were trying to find a criminal who'd stolen a diamond from a museum. And we had 3 stock characters on stage. We had an ex-convict who looked surly and angry and had committed lots of crimes before, so it would be obvious to stereotype him as the villain, and we had a janitor who looked a bit shifty and didn't have any money, and then we had this clean-cut security guard who was played by a guy called Lewis. I almost need to do a podcast on Lewis. Lewis is one of the most original, bizarre, hilarious people I've ever met in my life. I'll have to do a podcast on Lewis at some point. And he played this clean-cut security guard. I'm digressing. The whole point of that piece was to teach children about stereotyping, and I think it came across really well. And that's when my lecturer Steve said to me after watching, "You've got a real knack of working with primary school children. Have you ever considered being a primary school teacher?" And funnily enough, I was like, "Well, yes, I have. This is why I want to finish my degree, so I can get my teacher training done." And Steve really encouraged me to do that, and that's when he started giving me more tips. So that was a good insight into that. But we performed quite a few plays during our time doing our degree. We did The Erpingham Camp by Joe Orton, which was set in a holiday park. That was brilliant fun. We did Whose Life Is It Anyway, a very serious hospital drama about a quadriplegic called Ken who wants to be taken off his medication and end his life because he's suffering. And I played the doctor who completely disagreed with this, Dr. Emerson, who wanted to save Ken and didn't want to go against his moral code of being a doctor and saving lives and allow this man to die. So that was a really intense part for me, and I really enjoyed getting my teeth into that. I'd quite like to do that again when I'm a bit older, so I can really get into the mindset of that character and have a bit more life experience under my belt. We also performed a play called Humble Boy, which was about a 35-year-old space enthusiast and beekeeper called Felix Humble, who's just lost his father and his life is changing. And there's certainly elements of him being on the autistic spectrum there, and lots of the script that I had to talked about string theory and quantum theory, and that was a real mouthful. But there were lots of intense scenes in that, particularly a scene where Felix tries to commit suicide and has to make love to his ex-partner and discovers he's got a child. So there were moments in that where I had to dig really, really deep. And while I think at the time I did an okay performance, like I said with Whose Life Is It Anyway, I'd love to go back to that where I'm age appropriate for that role and be able to use some of the emotions and some of the things I've been through in my life to apply to that performance, and using the emotional recall to get into the mindset of that character. I think the play that really stuck with me at college, we all had to put on our own event in our second year, and I chose to do a one-man play, which is something I thought about for ages, thinking, okay, how can I really push myself now? I've been playing it safe for years. I've done all these musicals and all these plays, and it's great to be part of a company, but I want to see if I can challenge myself to do something that I might never normally do. So I looked up one-man plays, and I found one called Anorak of Fire, The Life and Times of Gus Gascoigne, Train Spotter. He's a northern train spotter. He wears a red woolly hat, a blue anorak. He's very, very nerdy. And it just seemed like so much fun. It was 29 pages, just one long monologue of this character, Gus, talking to the audience about how he became a train spotter and his experiences with women. And I read it through and I was bursting with laughter. It was just absolutely hilarious. And I thought, right, I have to do it. It's going to be a really difficult challenge, but if I don't push myself, I'm never going to grow. And with plenty of encouragement from Lee and from Steve and from all of my friends as well, I put that on at college. And it seemed to go down really, really well. And I left feedback forms after the performance so I can get a kind of gauge a view of how the event went down. And I've still got them now. And it really warms my heart that people were so kind about it. And I just felt so proud of myself because I was absolutely bricking it before going on. Because if I messed up a line or something went wrong, I had nobody to blame but myself. But then also on the flip side of that, because I was the only one who knew the play, I could take it wherever I wanted to. And yeah, I did Anorak of Fire at college in 2013. It was a very small but appreciative audience. But that, to me, no matter what size your audience is, you give them what they paid for. And they seem to really enjoy it. And I was lucky enough 4 years later to perform Anorak of Fire at the Fringe Theatre Fest in North Devon, ran by multi-story theatre, ran by Bill Buffrey and Jill Nathanson, who just do wonders for theatre in North Devon. So Bill and Jill, if you're watching, thank you for always encouraging theatre in North Devon and thinking outside of the box and giving so many opportunities to people who wouldn't otherwise necessarily get the chance. So I got to perform Anorak of Fire at the Fringe, and on opening day of the Fringe in 2017, Anorak of Fire was the top grossing show, and I was just overwhelmed. I mean, I did a little bit of promo, I tried to push it as much as I could, I made a trailer with assistance from my friend Matt Cann, and it was the top grossing show, and I was just overwhelmed. The reactions were fantastic, and I just felt so much more confident in myself, and because I had got the chance to do it again, I could add new nuances to the performance and improve on what I did last time. So that was I was really pleased with that. So that was all through college. And so before I move on to finishing my degree and where that led to next, I just want to talk about now somebody I mentioned all the way through the video, and that was my lecturer, Lee. Now, I don't think Lee will like me talking about him in such a smushy way, because I mean, I've always admired Lee. Like, ever since I first met him, I just admired the fact that he just didn't really care what anyone thought about him. He was just confident in himself, and he knew exactly who he was. And he was so passionate about musicals. He seemed to be this, like, Einstein, and just have this huge head of knowledge of all things theatre. I felt if I asked him anything, he could give me an answer. And he's very, very tough. Lee will push you to the limit. Lee will push you to get the best performance out of you. But only if I think he can really see the potential that if you really care about theatre, Lee will do everything he can to get the best performances out of you. And he can be quite harsh, and for some people it's not everyone's cup of tea. But sometimes you've got to be cruel to be kind, and theatre can be very, very stressful. And Lee can get very, very stressed, as I can get very, very stressed. And sometimes rehearsals with him are really, really tough. But I can tell you now, the best quality shows I've ever been in have been directed by Lee. And that's because I've never met anybody, including myself, so passionate about high quality theatre, about bringing new things to audiences, about putting out incredible shows and highlighting people's abilities and bringing the community into theatre. Lee is so passionate about what he does. I mean, it was him who instigated a performance to save the theatres when they closed back in 2017. North Devon Theatres went into administration, and it was Lee who brought all the societies together to say, let's put on a benefit concert as a bit of a fight back. It was called North Devon Theatres, Theatres Fight Back, something along those lines. And Lee put it all together. He got everyone in for a big meeting. He brought in security and staging, and it was all outside the Landmark. He was promoting it. He helped with the t-shirts, but it was Lee's dedication to keeping theatre alive that possibly without that big concert, we might not have the theatres that we have in North Devon today. And it's always been Lee's enthusiasm that's inspired me to want to go out and direct my own shows and make my own company and follow my dreams. And I tell Lee this quite a lot, but whether he pays any attention, I don't know, because Lee is very focused on what he does, and rightly so, which is why his shows end up being so high quality. And a lot of people think I'm just doing this to suck up, and I'm really, really not, because I think the world of him, and people who are inspiring deserve to know that. And Lee has been there for me during some of my darkest days and some of my toughest hours, when I've been at rock bottom, and I have been, like when I've really struggled with my self-esteem, when I've gone through personal troubles, or when I thought I can't do it anymore. Lee has never, ever given up on me. And even when he finds it difficult when I'm being emotional, I know he doesn't like it when people cry, because he gets a bit emotional too. He wouldn't admit it, but he does. But he's been there for me when I've needed him the most. And sometimes, even if he hasn't known it. And yes, he's a very busy guy, and he doesn't always reply to things, because he's always doing something, because he teaches at college, and he's taught at Make the Move drama, and he's busy in the theatres. And of course, he's got his own life as well. And COVID has made it very difficult to see people. But if I ever need a chat, and if I ever really needed him, I know he'd always be there. And without him, I don't think I'd have this drive that I do now. So, Lee, if you're listening to this, and I'm sorry if I've embarrassed you, or if I've been too smushy, you know I'm an emotional sod, and that will always be me. But you have honestly changed my life over the years, and I can't thank you enough for always pushing me to be the best, even pushing me to tears. That honk rehearsal where you made me cry so I can get into character, I won't forget that. That was a bit too far, but it brought out the best in me. So thank you for always championing me and never giving up, and giving me opportunities when I didn't think I had the courage to do it, and for when I've been right at the bottom of where I could possibly be. Thank you for being there to lift me up again, because I don't think you'll ever truly understand how much it means to me. And I know you're a very busy man. I know you're very, very hard to get hold of sometimes, and you've got your own things going on, but thank you from the bottom of my heart. I will do my best, and it's because of you I do my best to inspire other people to be the best they can be in theatre, and to be a drama teacher as well. So Lee, thank you. Love ya. So, that's the emotional stuff out the way. So I did my degree, at college, and then I finished that, and of course I went in to do my teacher training. But of course I was still carrying on my theatre alongside all this. I should mention that I've been involved in, and this is still COVID inclusive, over 100 productions. 100 different productions, ranging from musicals, dance shows, yes, dance shows, one-man shows, Shakespeare, stand-up comedy, contemporary, Greek theatre. I've been so lucky to being able to be involved in so many different shows. In North Devon, there are so many different societies who put on lots of different shows and opportunities. And of course, when I was at Plymouth, when I was at uni there, I worked with a company called Plymouth Theatre Company, who I did South Pacific with, and that was brilliant as well. So I've been so lucky down here. And as an amateur performer, because I'm not tied to work, I've been able to do all these different things. And I get asked all the time as a teacher, oh, I don't know how you're able to do all these shows when you're a teacher. I say, oh, I don't know how you've got a life. We haven't got a life. But people say all the time with teaching that you won't have a life if you're busy teaching. But I've always said that I'm always going to have a life, that as much as I love primary school teaching, it's still a job, and my mental health and my happiness will always come first. And because my theatre makes me happy, and it's partly my social life, it doesn't feel like it's extra work, and I do it because I love it. So it's the same with anyone going off and doing sports or gym or any other vocations that you take outside of teaching. You've got to have balance. If you overload yourself with one or the other, it becomes too much, and suddenly the things you enjoy end up becoming loathsome and horrible. And I never want that to happen. So as long as I'm still enjoying theatre and teaching, I'm never going to give them up. Never going to let you down. I don't know why I went to Rick Astley there. You just got Rickrolled, podcast. So, I've been carrying on performing since I finished my degree and since I've been primary school teaching. Of course, things have slowed down massively since COVID hit, but then I started doing Storytime with Billy and sharing stories and concerts every night. And for me, that was my way of keeping up my hunger for performance, because essentially reading stories in front of a camera and doing different voices and making it immersive and imaginative was performing. And of course, I was performing in front of a live audience every night. And I did some concerts, solo concerts online, which I would never normally have had the confidence to do and put myself out there, but they were really well received and people were really supportive, and that was brilliant. And it just meant, even though I couldn't see the audience or hear them, I could see their comments, and it's been interesting to adapt to that and get audience feedback in a different way. But to me, I used to worry so much about what the audiences think of me, and I know even subconsciously now I still wonder, oh, was I good enough? Did the audience like it? Was I crap? Was it not very good? But I'm still trying to learn to just let go a bit and just perform because it makes me happy, rather than doing it to make other people happy, because it will do that anyway if my passion is coming across. But I just need to stop taking myself so seriously, and I think that will make me a bit looser as a performer and mean I can just enjoy things more and not get so in my head about things. It's the same with teaching as well. Once I just learn to let go, and we can all learn with doing this, is let go of our insecurities and worrying about what other people think. Do something because it makes you happy, not because you're constantly trying to impress somebody else. And that's what I try to instill in my students as well, in primary school and at centre stage school as well. So I'm lucky to still be performing in some contexts. And last summer, when the COVID restrictions eased, I was able to go out and do some live storytelling and do some parties as well, because I love entertaining people and I love working with people. Even though I'm quite shy, I'm very much a people person, and certainly when I'm in that performing mindset, it's easier to interact with people as well. I would love to direct some more shows as well. I directed Fawlty Towers in 2015, and that was great fun, although admittedly I was going through some difficult troubles in my personal life at the time, and my head wasn't quite in it, so I think that hindered things slightly, although I was incredibly proud of the work that the cast and crew put into Fawlty Towers, and it was nominated for a award from NODA, the National Operatic and Dramatic Association. So that was great news, and so I'd love to be able to direct a full-scale production like that again. But of course, I directed Romeo and Juliet through school. Through Centre Stage School, we directed a show called Let the Games Begin. And of course, as we're able to get back into person, I'm hoping to do more of that as well. Because it's lovely. Now I'm a teacher, I get more of an understanding and more of a passion for directing and seeing other people achieve. Because I used to be so self-centered as a performer that I just wanted it to all be about me, 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 me. And of course, there's always an element of that, because you have to do your best for yourself and take pride in what you do. That's fine. But of course, I want to give back, and it's lovely instilling the skills that I've gained over the years and putting that into other people. So through primary school, instilling because I always think drama is important in primary school as well, because it's not always about finding the best actors or the most confident people. It's about giving people a voice. I've worked with a few children with selective mutism over the years, and it's interesting with them that you don't want to just force them into speaking, but you just want them to be able to be confident in what they do. And building confidence can come through role play, through team building games, and that's all an element of drama, or through reading stories and putting character into it, watching them laugh and relax. And I feel that's been the best way to bring people out of their shell. It's not to drag them out, but just to coax them out and to let them find themselves and discover things through play and through games as well. So drama's been a real key school in primary school. And I think I'll definitely do a podcast on drama in primary at some point. And of course through Centre Stage School, which is where I teach in North Devon, it's not always about just finding people who want to go on and be performers. It's just enhancing the enjoyment that people have for performing arts. And it's just for people who love being on stage and just love performing, because not everyone's going to go professional and not everybody wants to. But if they want to carry on performing, and of course it's a very healthy lifestyle to dance, and it burns lots of calories, and it gives you endorphins that make you happy, sometimes it's just nice just to encourage people to do things that make them happy, rather than for like financial gain or for professional careers. Just do things because they make you happy. I think we need a bit more of that in the world. And I think as I move forward in my theatre career, I'm going to do things not because people tell me, oh, you've done too many shows, or you can't do that, or you're too busy. I'm just going to do it because it makes me happy, because we only live once, and we've got to live our life the way we want to. And I will live my life hopefully inspiring and teaching people, and performing and pouring my heart out on stage, because that's what makes me happy. And if I can just inspire somebody else to go out there and give their best performance, or to make somebody else want to stand on stage or to find a voice, it makes it all worthwhile. So that's kind of theatre in a nutshell. Again, it's such a broad topic, and I'm sure in later podcasts I can go into more detail about some of the individual shows I've done, like go into like a musical podcast and links into theatre and drama schools. But it was a nice way, I think, for this one to be able to vent about my teaching journey so far, and to share about some of those really important people who've inspired me throughout my performing career. And if you know somebody out there who's inspired you, or somebody who's made you feel confident, or who's risen you out of the gutter, let them know. I think it's so important that people are told how incredible they are. We need to boost people up, and I wish I did that more. I wish I would stop chasing praise so much myself, because I used to do that all the time. I hate to admit it, but I did. And now I feel happy giving back to other people and just praising others and seeing other people achieve. That's what makes me really happy, and that's why I love being a teacher. I want other people to succeed, and of course I want that for myself too, but watching other people grow and succeed and be the best they can be, that's the best feeling in the world. So if you know somebody out there who deserves praise, go and tell them. Thanks for joining me for another Lights Camera Teaching podcast. We'll be back soon with some more teaching and theatrical antics, but until then, stay safe, keep smiling, and always be kind. Thanks everyone, see you soon, bye!